Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the Gospel of John. We're looking at John chapter 4, beginning to read today at verse 4. Now, we started this chapter in yesterday's session. We saw that Jesus was on the way back to Galilee. He spent some time in Jerusalem in Judea, but now he's traveling back to Galilee, and he decides to travel through Samaria. Now, that's the most direct route, of course, but that's not the typical route that Jewish travelers would take. They would normally take a longer route and go around Samaria because the animosity between Samaritans and Jews was pretty intense. But Jesus chooses to go through Samaria. And it's during this trip he's going to have this conversation with a Samaritan woman. And today we'll read the beginning of that conversation. So let's start reading at verse 4 of chapter 4. Now Jesus had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. And Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus asked her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town in order to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. So we see how their conversation begins. Jesus and his disciples are passing the village of Sychar, and they need some food. So while Jesus waits at the town well, he sends his disciples into the village in order to purchase them some food. We're not told why Jesus doesn't go with them. Of course, we know that he is waiting for this woman. This is providential. He knows she will be coming to the well. He knows that. And he wants to have a conversation with her. So he sent his disciples to buy food. He's at the well. She comes to draw water from the well. And Jesus asked her, "Will you give me a drink?" "I'm thirsty," he said. "I have nothing to draw with. Will you give me a drink?" An interesting way to begin the conversation. Of course, she is shocked because she recognizes that he is Jewish, and she's surprised that he would even speak to her. Notice how she says, "You're asking me, a Samaritan? You being a Jew, you're asking me for water?" Because Jews, we're told, do not associate with Samaritans. In other words, once again, this animosity is being referenced here. So the fact that a Jewish man would ask a Samaritan woman for a drink of water, really for anything, is unusual. It is outside of the normal protocol. For most Jews would look down their noses at most Samaritans. They would not want to have any kind of conversation with them if it could be avoided. So she is surprised that Jesus would talk to her, would ask her for something as if he needed something from her. But of course, this is Jesus' way of beginning the conversation. He has some serious matters to discuss with her. That's why he's here. Jesus has come through Samaria for this very purpose. He has stopped at this village for this very purpose. He is waiting by the well for this very purpose. He wants to speak to this particular Samaritan woman. And so he asked her, "Will you give me a drink?" Now, after she expresses surprise, notice how Jesus responds. Verse 10, Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God, and if you knew who it is that asked you for a drink, you would have asked of him, and he would have given you living water." How interesting. Jesus says, if only you knew who I was, if only you knew what the true gift of God was, the gift that comes through me. If only you knew these things, you would be asking me for living water. You see, this conversation is going to revolve around the gift that only Jesus can bring, the water of life, the living water. His asking her for a drink is only a way to get into that conversation, because what he really wants to happen is for her to drink of the living water that only the Lord can provide. And so the conversation has begun. And Jesus has opened the door that she might come to understand where you find living water. Hope you join us tomorrow. We're going to continue looking at this conversation. There's so much here as Jesus is going to offer to this Samaritan woman, and really to all who will come to him, the living water, the water of life that only the Son of God can give. Join us next time for our 5-minute Bible study in the Gospel of John.